Okay, so this foldable is to help us determine functions or graphs that are discrete or continuous. So we're going to start off with discrete. And one way that we would be able to determine if a function was discrete is if it, by the information of determining if they're counting something. So it says a set of data is said to be, and this is going to be discrete, if the values belonging to the set are distinct. So what this is telling me that my discrete includes specific X and Y values. Okay, so in examples of things that we could have for counting would be, so number of students, candy, we can count candy, we can count books, we can count money, just anything that we could count that would be a good example here. Okay, so then for the other one, continuous, we relate this one to measuring. So this one says a set of data is said to be, and we're going to put continuous here, if the values belonging to the set can take on any value within a finite or infinite interval. So this one is telling me that it includes all X and Y values contained on the graph. Okay, and some examples of things that we would measure would be time, temperature, height, weight, anything like that. Anything that you can measure would be a good example here. Okay, so now flipping over, we're going to start on this side. So on this first one, all I'm given is a graph that doesn't, or a grid that has some information about X and Y, but it doesn't have an actual graph on it. So I know what I'm going to do is just kind of fill out what I would need over here. I know this is going to be where my X values are, and this is going to be where my Y values are. I'll get something else to write in so that. So X values, Y values. I know that my input is going with my X values and my output is with my Y values. And then I know that number of rooms is for my X because that's on the X axis here, and then total hotel cost. I'm just going to put total $sign for total cost would be for my Y values because it's located on the Y axis. Now, in order to determine what if my function here would be discrete or continuous, well, all I do is look at my X and Y values, and I see that I would count the number of rooms and the money. So since I'm counting, that tells me that this one is discrete. Okay. Now over here, I'm going to do the same thing because I'm given this grid here that has information about my X and Y, but I don't have an actual graph. So I'm going to label everything. So I know this would be my X values. This would be my Y values. I know that my input would go with my X and my output would go with my Y. And then looking down here at my X axis, I see that I have pounds. I guess I should spell it out. Pounds per piece. And then for my Y, I have the total weight of luggage. So now looking at what my X and Y values are from pounds and then weight, I see that we measure in pounds and we measure weight. So therefore this one is continuous. going back over here. Now this time when I look at this graph, I see that I have set points that are on here. And I remember that discrete says it is a set of specific or distinct points. And since these are distinct points or specific points of x and y values that are not connected together, I know that this one is discrete. So I'm going to put points not connected. So therefore it is discrete. Okay, and then going over to this one. So if you remember what it says about continuous, because I see here that all my points are connected, and on continuous it was saying that it was the set of all of any x and y values. So it would be any of these values on this line right here that would be telling me that it is just or since it includes all those values, it would be continuous. So since points are connected, we know that it is continuous. Okay, so now let's move down to our table here. For my table, I see that I have x that are hats and costs that are y. And all I need to ask myself is, am I counting or am I measuring? And I know that I count hats, I count cost, because that's money. Since I'm counting on both, that means that it is discrete. Okay. Moving over here on this side, I see that my x represents width and my y represents volume. So I just need to ask myself, am I counting or am I measuring? I know that I measure the width, and we measure volume. So since we're measuring, it is continuous. Okay. Now for this one, again, looking at my x and my y, I see x is for bags and y is for marbles. So asking myself if I'm counting or measuring, I know that I count bags and I count marbles. They're both being counted, so this one is discrete. Okay, so now, again, looking at this table, I want to focus on my x and my y. So x is time and y is distance. So am I counting or am I measuring? I know that I measure time and I measure distance. So therefore I am continuous. Okay, so now all I need to do is take this and fold it in half like this. And then I will glue this end right here on this side on page 10 of my notebook. And then with this you'll have a practice half sheet that you'll need to complete. So this is how it needs to be done. You're determining from each statement if it's discrete or continuous. So remember, we ask ourselves if we're counting or if we're measuring. So for number 1, I have the height of a horse. So I know that I measure the height of a horse. So right over here under continuous, I'm going to put measure to show that that's how I identified that this one was continuous. Okay. Number 2, it says the number of people in your class. So again, am I counting or am I measuring? I count the number of people in my class. So that tells me this is discrete because it's counting. And then I would continue like that, determining if I'm counting or measuring. That's what determines if I'm discrete or continuous for the rest of them. And once you're done with that, you'll turn it in for a grade.